And I was just looking at is it a public comment? Are there any public comments? There is on the agenda. All right. Emily, are you able to bring up the agenda? I think it's NEC.
Yeah.
Oh, the minutes. Yep. So I read through the minutes. I did not have any comments. Does anyone else on the commission have any comments, or did they make it on the?
I thought they were excellent, and I made one grammatical change of just reversing 2 words.
Yeah, I clarified a few statements. They're tracked at the top of page 5, but it's all just things I stated, and that's it, just that one spot. So I'm good with it. This is.
I'll move we accept them as amended.
Okay, do we have a second? Shayla seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'll note that Jill just jumped in as well.
Yep, and it looks like she approved, so we have 5.
Cool.
All right, so are we ready to start on the NECS?
We have everybody who's coming on, and they're on remote except for the 2.
Yeah, so up next on the agenda is an informal meeting regarding the New England Chimney Supply NECS specific plan. In the room, I have with me Rick Hamlin, the engineer, and Pierre Simard of New England Chimney Supply, as well as Ray from New England Chimney Supply. The Planning Commission may recall that a specific plan went through the process in 2021, and it looks like Ally Beckett is now jumping in from the waiting room as well, from the Planning Commission. So in 2021, there was a specific plan process. They have a facility on Williston Road near Commerce Ave. It got through the whole process, but there was some concern at the very end that the cat and mouse with the substantial benefit, they had the substantial benefit there, the bus pull off and the bike shelter, and the sidewalk from their property line to the South Brownell intersection. Planning Commission was in agreement that for their expansion, that sidewalk and bike locker and bus shelter would be the substantial benefit. But V-Trans said, we won't let this sidewalk be built until there's pedestrian connectivity at that intersection. So we had all the bylaw language, drafted up for this to be worked out at discretionary permit, but there was a concern that there was some unknowns with how the substantial benefit would be built, that it wouldn't happen consecutively with the addition of their building.
And to clarify, that's the Brownell Road intersection, right? Not the Commerce Street one.
Right, correct. Yep. The traffic signal at South Brownell, North Brownell, not the stop sign at Commerce Street, correct. So this is an informal meeting to revive the NECS specific plan. They considered some options like trying to pursue grant funding. The Public Works Department is going after that grant funding for other project list items. So basically they've come to the conclusion to take responsibility for those intersection improvements so that the sidewalk can be constructed. The next step for the applicant would be to file a formal application, but we decided to give an informal meeting with you guys as an FYI before a formal process were to begin. And if you guys have anything to add, please do fill in.
I have 2 questions. The first is there anything that would keep us from picking this up again? Because typically our decision is final. And typically you would say you can't keep applying for the same thing. On the other hand, it's been a couple of years. And so I just wonder, is there anything that gets in the way?
Sure, 2 things. But you can't keep applying for the same thing as a rule that comes out of development review in chapter 117 as related to things that go before the development review board. Specific plan, while it is in the zoning bylaw, is a identified process for an applicant directed bylaw amendment. So not quite the same serial applications rule for a specific plan. And then second, there is a difference in this application as under discussion tonight related to sort of the certainty and the mechanism by which the substantial benefit offered would be provided. So it's the same players, it's the same proposed site plan, it's all of those things the same. But procedurally, it would be treated as a new application. Noticing would be redone with updated abutters lists, et cetera, et cetera. So same faces in the room, same plan in front of the commission, treat it like a new application.
Mhm.
My other question is there any interest from the people who purchased the Robert property to contribute to that intersection?
That was one of the ideas that they considered, and yeah, I forgot to mention that. One was grant funding, the other was to collaborate. They explored that option, but they're not interested.
Because the sidewalk would benefit everybody along there.
Yeah, basically, that was the concept that they actually approached us, and then somehow their plans had changed. So it would have been a great marriage, but apparently it's
I put the heads together.
Together. Good.
Yeah.
so, yeah,
Good, thanks. I'm glad to know that it was explored,
Mhm.
just for obvious reasons.
right.
Yeah, and there's lots when they come in to develop individually, they'll still be required to build their portion of sidewalk on
Yeah.
Industrial Ave. So this intersection signalization would provide that through connectivity. Mhm.
Okay, does Rick or Pierre want to say anything or to the commission?
Sure.
And scoot
Come
on closer to
closer,
the microphone.
Rick, so the microphone picks you up.
Excuse me. So as Emily recounted, there's been a couple of process steps that we've looked at in terms of trying to advance the project. And the goal, of course, is the expansion of the New England chimney supply. With the feedback from V-Trans that intersection improvements would need to be made at the South Barnell intersection. And specifically, those improvements are to provide the pedestrian accommodations for the two legs of the intersections where there are no pedestrian accommodations now because there is no linkage in that one corner. So again, the goal was to try to apply for the applicant to provide the horsepower to apply for the grants and pay the community share of the improvement work. Again, Public Works and the town manager reviewed that and felt like that application would be competition. It would compete against grants that the town wanted to get. Public Works Director Hoare recommended that instead of that process or escrow accounts or other pieces, in his email back in response said that Public Works was feeling like if the sidewalk got built in front of across the frontage of the NEC land holding and the land that was required at the intersection could be obtained, that would be sufficient, and Public Works would support that level of improvement. And that would dovetail with their future plans. And so that's one other piece that we haven't really talked about is along with the improvements at the intersection to accommodate those pedestrian accommodations. So pedestals with actuation devices and crosswalks and all of the wiring that would go back to the signal cabinet. There's a corner of the intersection that'll need to be obtained to get adequate right-of-way elbow room to construct the sidewalk up to the intersection and provide those accommodations. So that's one more piece added to the puzzle. So we welcome the opportunity to just have the informal meeting with you about restarting, because the lift now for New England Chimney Supply went from sidewalk, bus stop, pad for a bus stop structure that Green Mountain Transit would supply, and some bike boxes to now all of that plus land acquisition plus improvements to the intersection. And that's why the coordination with the U-Haul folks would have been good, because it'd be shared costs in that effort to make that happen. So, but it did not. So now that list of improvements is fairly long. And so what we would welcome is, we understand the goals, what the end result is in terms of sidewalk and all the other amenities. The question is, how much of that, where in that process does New England Chimney Supply need to participate in terms of making those things come to fruition? Do they need to acquire the land, apply for the permits, and provide the town with a shovel-ready project that then they could apply for grants? Do they need to do all of that and construct all of the improvements to meet the bar of the specific plan process in terms of a significant contribution to the community? So that's kind of what we'd like to discuss, is how the planning commission feels that scope is formulated, what pieces New England Chimney Supply would do as a part of meeting that threshold for the specific plan process. So we welcome your thoughts and input on that.
So one question I have is, you said, Emily, is where you circled in that corner, that's the land that is in question about being acquired?
Yeah,
And at least one tree would have to be removed.
And has that property owner been approached at all at this point or not?
They have, and they have expressed a willingness to discuss that right-of-way acquisition. In fact, I believe the New England Chimney Supply folks have a letter saying that landowner will accommodate the request and allow that corner to be obtained for the right-of-way needed.
Does anyone else on the planning commission have any comments or questions?
I remember that Ron was our representative on the committee. Was there a second person on it?
He took over from me. I
Okay,
think the
'cause I remembered you
first
too.
couple
Yeah.
meetings
Yeah.
and scheduling changed it.
So we don't have the institutional memory of all the detail.
Yeah, I was pretty involved in the process. I mean, I'll make the general comment and question, which I remember wasn't quite as clean as I think maybe you explained, Emily, because I remember there was a lot of concerns from the neighborhood abutting the property about noise, about distance from the domiciles, like, land values, et cetera, change of character of the neighborhood. If I recall correctly, came to a relatively good agreement with the neighbors, that they were happy with the change in structures, fences, berms, all of that. I assume stays the same.
I would assume, yes.
Okay, and then the concern ultimately is a bus stop enough? And the answer was no, it's not enough. It wasn't just the lack of building, it was that without building that sidewalk and the intersection connection, the public benefit was dubious relative to the impact of making, because a specific plan is not a small thing, right? I mean, we were making an exception to the bylaws and sort of writing it into the code. So we want to make sure that it's worth it for the town. Whatever. I'll make the general comment that I always thought that with pedestrian connection and the bus stop and the full sidewalk, all of that, I thought that the balance was there. And so I personally, just not speaking for the planning commission, but just for myself as a member, would entertain revisiting this if there was a way to make sure that it happens, right? Not have it so that the sidewalk gets built and then there's 10 years before there's a crosswalk, right? I think that's really the difficulty with this whole thing, is how do you make sure it's going to in fact actually happen?
And I think that at the time, the creative solution was we go ahead and put the money in escrow for everything.
Mhm.
There was a little bit of uncertainty with how that happened, and I was actually talking to Rick about this earlier, and in that, what is the word used?
Yeah, so one of the concerns that came from staff, and I think it actually came from Public Works, was with escrowed money, the concern was that over time that possibility of using the escrow money goes away. And I think he may have been confusing impact fees that are definitely time rated, by law, versus an escrow agreement, which is an agreement that can have whatever term the parties agree to, including forever. So there's, I think that the idea of escrowing money, the concern being that there might be some time frame that just is baked into the agreement. So I think that can be addressed. The other piece about the sidewalk being built before the pedestrian accommodations, because all of these improvements happen within the V-Trans right of way, no sidewalk will be built until those are done, because that was the issue with V-Trans. They said, look, you can't terminate a sidewalk here because there's no pedestrian accommodation at the intersection. And so we consider this a sidewalk to nowhere. So if there's a sidewalk, there's pedestrian accommodations. And likewise, there are no pedestrian accommodations without a sidewalk, because otherwise you're sending people to a place where there's no place to go. So those two things, in order to get an access permit, an 1111 permit from V-Trans, would have to come together in the same construction. They would have to be built at the same time. Otherwise, V-Trans wouldn't permit it. So that's kind of helps, I think, say one can't come without the other. They are definitely married in the eyes of V-Trans.
Yeah, but there's still the possibility that we effectively grant this plan and that money sits in escrow and a decade goes by with no sidewalk and no intersection.
Well, and that's why I think one of the options that we're talking about, because the dollar amount that we've gone to from the beginning bus stop, okay, now it's some sidewalk, now it's bus stop, sidewalk, bike boxes, and all of this package is well north of $1 million to make it happen. And quite a bit of effort, and that's construction. There's also design and permitting that would have to go along with that. And so one of the things that we'd like to discuss is the idea of turning over a complete set of plans with permits. So with the V-Trans permits and all the permits required, the land acquisition, so that it's a permitted, ready to construct project. So that would fall under the completely shovel-ready category, which in terms of grant applications always scores high. You know, if you have a shovel-ready project that's been scoped, that all of the environmental assessments taking place, you have all the permits in hand, the plans are on the table, all you need to do is put it out to bid. That's usually a good winner for a grant. So that's something, because the scope has become so large, just getting the permits and the design is a very significant lift. And so we think that could be a very significant contribution to the town to hand over a project that is ready to build.
You forgive me, I don't know public infrastructure construction probably nearly as well as they have for Chapin or others. Where does that leave us?
Leaves you with a set of plans. I would encourage this commission to go back and look at the reason that it chose not to move forward with this last time. And I would recommend the commission continue to review the project under those criteria. And I'm at risk of speaking out of school. I'm going to leave it at that.
Well, that's why I asked the question, because I'm getting to the same thing. Are we any further? I mean, we're certainly further forward in the process, but are we any further assured in that?
So,
And that's where I'm concerned about.
yeah, the definition of a substantial benefit is an action taken at the applicant's expense. So that would mean, in my read of that, the full construction. The way I had the bylaw language written up was in chapter 7, enforcement and guarantees. An application for discretionary permit shall include evidence of all necessary permits, permissions, easements, and funding for the defined substantial benefits. And then listing off what those benefits are. So mechanically, I don't think much would have to change with that statement, but what that would mean is when that addition is going to the DRB for its final permits, we need to see what Rick is talking about, the construction ready, and then the expansion wouldn't get its closeout certificates until that intersection and sidewalk work is at some level of construction or completion. The devil's always in the details, so I think that can be worked out in that specific plan process, but I think that expectation in chapter 9 is that the substantial benefit is taken on at the applicant's expense.
By the way, you guys get to sit through the weirdness of the planning commission, which is we don't have private session, everything. We have to talk about you in front of you.
No, that's fine.
Sorry, we actually have to do that.
No worries.
It's different than the DRB. or whatever. And I don't mean to dominate the conversation. I just want to make sure I understood what you just said, Emily. So just boiling that down, you're saying, when you say they won't get their permit to close out, does that mean they can't build until the intersection is mostly built? Or no, that's not what you're saying? Or they just wouldn't be able to sort of wrap the project?
I don't know, something in that range, but basically we would want to see that it's the specific plan in terms of the bylaw amendments could be approved, but then it doesn't get its permits at the development review board until we see that all of those other.
Or you're saying we could condition it on that?
Yeah, it would basically be conditions that it can't start construction until, either this is shovel ready or it's ready to be constructed in the same construction cycle. There may still need to be some escrow of funds to ensure it happens, but the applicant would still be taking the lead on all of the permits and all of the construction.
I have one last question, I promise I'll stop dominating the questions here. What is your guys' reaction to if we came back to you and said, okay, but only if you ensure it's actually getting built? Shovel ready is not enough. We want to see that it's built before the DRB grants your application, or see that it's in the process of construction with, there's a clear end. I imagine that gives you some heartburn. How much?
Well, so it's a little bit chicken and the egg, and we've had this conversation with Emily a couple of times now. In that, what's the guarantee that if we do all those things and get to a shovel-ready project, so we're not even constructed, but all of the work that can be done without any approval from the planning commission or DRB, whatever, got all of those plans, all the permits in hand, and then we're told by either the planning commission or the DRB, depending on which section of approval we're talking about, well, that's nice, but we're not interested today. And so there's a huge amount of risk moving ahead with the project that we're talking about now, because it's not just the design of some sidewalk in front of the frontage, which is money that could be put at risk. Now we're talking about some, like I said, very much a heavy lift just for the design and permitting. So that's the part that I think we struggle with, is what's the process steps. We're willing to move ahead with something as long as we can come to some sort of agreement, and maybe that's a head shake and an eye contact that says, yeah, if you come with us, we feel like, and that's why we're here today, is to say, if we come back with this, does it look like the odds are good? And that's, I guess, the best we can ask for in any of the permitting process. Are the odds good for us to be able to be successful on this run? So in terms of doing everything right through to funding construction, I leave that to you.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we don't have the ability to eat $500,000 and not move forward with the project, right? So it's always going to be a gamble, but if we're sitting in a room and everybody's agreed that the original substantial benefit is that we agreed upon is accurate, you just have to make sure it gets over the finish line, and we condition it to that, then I think we can easily do that. And in the end of the day, if we have to pay for everything, that's what we are willing to agree to get it done, then I think we can do that, but we don't have the ability to risk the money without the expansion, right? So, but we sure want to do our part and make sure that, whatever the conditions are, if we agree upon them, then, words are bond, right? So, yeah, we can get it done.
So the way this would play out is the specific plan would be approved by the planning commission and the select board without all of that detail and design work, not only for the expansion itself, which is just now a concept drawing, but that sidewalk and intersection improvement as well. And then they would move consecutively together through the DRB process. It's yet to be determined when that best moment is. Probably the filing of the discretionary permit or final plans or administrative permit, where they don't get to move on to the construction phase of their addition until we see that the sidewalk and the intersection is gonna happen at that same phase. So all of that legwork that has to happen in terms of engineering and permitting doesn't have to happen for the planning commission and select board to approve a specific plan, because that chapter 7 language would say this needs to happen as part of your discretionary permit review.
Yeah, a specific plan is one plan. It's a plan that includes a flexing of the bylaw standards, and it includes the provision of a public benefit. And that's the way the planning commission and the select board approve it. In this case, there's some language that needs to be integrated into that about the concurrency of the benefit and the development. Those two elements then need to move through design and approval, in my view, as one plan. And there are these further stages, you know, the approved final plan, which is the authorization to file a permit to actually move dirt. The administrative permit, which is the authorization to go move dirt. Then there's the certificate of occupancy at the end, the authorization to go, you know, actually use what you built. I would not want, nor would I impose on any future zoning administrator, the stress of a completed industrial building that's missing its sidewalk, with a local employer saying, we need that CO. Sorry, we didn't get to build your sidewalk. You're standing in our way. That's, you
Yeah,
just,
you'd want it earlier in the process.
you
So-
really want to build some serious safeguards in there, because, you know, as I said, going back to why this did not make approval last time, it was about the certainty that the improvements and the benefit would happen. And that's, you know, this is a challenging one. It's challenging to come up with a substantial public benefit for a project like this. This is also a project that puts a very large industrial building and a very tall sound barrier fence in the backyards of an affordable residential neighborhood. And that had active participation by members in that neighborhood who weren't so sure about all this. So it's a decision that comes with some gravity and some flexing of some bylaw provisions that are very specifically in there in the interest of everybody in Williston, and having different kinds of land uses get along with one another. So, you know,
I do
it's
think,
not nothing.
I do think the latter was addressed to the point, at least that the committee was willing to take a plan back to the planning commission. So I think if the neighbors had enough votes on that committee that if they weren't reasonably satisfied, that committee is not gonna even bring the plan back to us.
Yeah, and I think that design work was done, and the noise study was done. You know, you do still have to open up to achieve approval. You have to open up that process. You have to warn all those neighbors. Some of them are different now. Houses have been bought and sold on Kirby Lane.
Mhm.
So you may have somebody new in the process who had no idea about this last time, or maybe when they bought their house.
Or thought it was dead.
You know, and there are two bodies that have to nod heads on the bylaw change, both this one and then the select board. It's a high bar. It's meant to be. Staff are now seasoned veterans of this process, in, you know, not just this one, but others. And the last thing I'll say is, as the director of this department, there is limited capacity to handle these things. They are massively time intensive. And we want to help the planning commission achieve success on these, but, you know, our advice is going to be to call out challenges we see early on. And, you know, I think I started my planning career working with applicants, really thinking I was in the problem-solving business. Gosh, the zoning says this, but you want to do that, and they don't quite line up, and let's see if we can figure out a way to make it work. And no strategy in my professional planning career has burned me more often than trying to get creative with bylaw. And I'm just going to put that out there as a cautionary tale. And simple things work best. And simple mechanisms work best, like concrete on the ground and, you know, crosswalks in the air or head signals in the air. So my advice, having been through the last one of these and watching the level of effort going into the current one under review, is, you know, proceed with caution, be conservative, be realistic about what can be provided and when. And unfortunately, this is one that deals with the construction of public infrastructure, which is the most costly and time-consuming stuff to build
In a state right of way.
in a state right of way.
Mhm.
And, you know, involving multiple parties. And we worked through all of that last time, and it really just came down to who was going to do what and when was it going to happen. A refinement of that provides the commission with more certainty could be a path forward. But I'd go back, each of you, and look at that former decision and say, well, what's the point where if this had gone a different direction, it could have gotten over the bar, and then, bring that feedback to the applicant.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt. And thank you, Alex, for your recall on that, as well as Rick and Pierre. Shayla has her hand up.
Yeah, I am curious if, and maybe we just have to wait for the process, but because of that exact question, I am curious if there is a proposed sort of, here is when we would be, like we could clearly say, yes, this is done, or yes, this is being done. Now proceed with the next step. Like, I don't know enough about the DRB review process, for example, to know when that would make sense. And before I was gonna vote to say like, yeah, let's do this all over, I would want to be able to see what those choices are and just try to make a judgment of if that's realistic or not, and maybe have another informal meeting with the applicants to say, okay, this is not agreed upon. We still have to go through the full process, but there are at least realistic options that everybody could live with here to choose from. Because again, and Alex, you're much more knowledgeable about those steps than I am. I just don't know those steps well enough to be like, oh, there's like 2 or 3 places where like this could logically make sense. And we could see that it was absolutely going to happen. And it was before they'd sunk a ton of money into the property. I don't understand that. So I think I would want to know that that is actually a realistic thing. And there are choices there that everyone could live with before we go through and do it again, especially with the neighbors.
Okay,
I
I'd
don't know
like to say
if I don't know if
something
that's an okay thing to ask for, but I don't know. I'd like, a list of how it works, this step, this step, this step, and the choices for where we could hit the brakes.
Kate, I have something to say, but I'd like to go last because I always speak too much too soon.
Well, Ellie or Jill, do you have anything to say on this, or?
I guess my question is, how is it determined, like, is the sidewalk really a substantial benefit? It kind of, if my memory of that intersection is correct, it can't really go anywhere across the street. So like, who would end up using it?
People walk down North Brownell Road.
Oh yeah, North Brownell. Okay, you're right, North Brownell. I was kind of thinking South Brownell or the rest of Williston Road.
So the
But
sidewalk that's considered the substantial benefit is from where the NECS property line would terminate to the intersection, because the normal bylaw would require them, major additions and new builds are required to build their portion of sidewalk. So the sidewalk along their property's frontage and the 2 lots that they'd be expanding onto, it's not the benefit, it's the sidewalk beyond that.
It's the sidewalk, the crosswalk intersection, the bus pull off, and the bike shelters combined, right?
All right.
And, yeah, have the bus shelter too, yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Jill, did you have anything, or?
I mean, I didn't love the proposal the first time as a substantial benefit, and I sort of surprised to see it come around again. It's definitely not a priority for me to look at this situation again. I think we've done the huge due diligence, bringing all. I mean, there was a very passionate group of neighbors and folks who spoke to this the first time. So I think I'm pretty clear on where I stand on it now.
Thank you. Chapin?
Okay, I feel like because I think many of us have ambivalence of different amounts. and I've always been ambivalent about this because, you know, we have a good employer with a reasonable plan that's not in keeping with our zoning. And when this came around the first time, I actually voted against it at the very start because of it encroaching on a residential area. And I think, am I right that the residential area starts halfway back that first property?
No, it goes all the way to the back.
Does it go back there? So there's actually nothing being built in the residential area. It's only in the gateway. But it's right against residential properties on Kirby. And so,
The same property that the current structure. borders.
yes,
Right, and
well, and one additional,
You can see the residential lot lines, the dotted ones there.
yes,
so, and the building expansion occurs on the current lot. And then parking is
yes,
on the current residential lot.
yes.
Well, there's two house lots.
Yeah, so it's, it's not a separate building, the building is
But I
gonna
will,
be added to the existing building.
right, but I believe only, so the kind of the interesting part is that one lot that the building is going on actually has two different.
Yeah,
So-
gateway in the front and residential.
That's what I was thinking.
Right.
The line between them, maybe what's showing there was
Right.
halfway back. And
So
so,
the front side is commercial, the
Yeah.
back side is.
Yeah.
is
so if your expansion had just been the front side, it's also like, do we want to say the gateway can have something commercial, I'd say, or
Right.
manufacturing? I would say, okay, but it was going back into
Right.
the residential a little bit. Could you pull up the one that's the one that's a aerial photo that
Yeah.
has more detail, the one you were showing the trees on that intersection of Brownell on?
Is it okay for me to say something?
Yeah,
Okay, so my point of view is this, and kind of to Jill's comments is that, you know, we did a lot of work with the neighbors. We formed the advisory committee, we did tours, we talked, they were very passionate, and at the end of the day, you know, we want to be good neighbors. And we came up with solutions that everybody was good with. And that was a precondition to it even moving forward, which then it did. So I think for that portion, we have, other than if this goes forward and there's neighbors that have changed, I think we have
yes.
solved, right?
So, and I'm probably moving a little slowly for you because I was gonna do it like a story and circle around to the. So I voted against it the first vote because of the impact on residential I didn't think was fair to consider. I thought that was too big of an impact. When it came to the second vote, I was one person who voted not to end the process because I felt like you would have done all the steps you were supposed to do. And we're just down to trying to figure out how to make it be guaranteed to happen. And we should allow that process to keep going. So I was the outlier on both of those votes. At the moment, if I just don't worry about any past thoughts, if the residential people who are there are still having any issues with 4 a.m, 5 a.m, backup beepers and stuff, or if there's any of that, you know, difficulty, because which is, to me, it's a matter of the location. It's not that you're a bad employer, but you sometimes have to do things and then they affect the neighbors because they're so close. If there's still any tension in that area, I wouldn't support going ahead because for the residential people that live there, they're going to say, oh, no, not again. We thought we went through that. And so just for the emotional reason, I would say I don't want to stir that pot again. But if things are still okay there, then I agree that we have a plan. And if you could guarantee the steps that we're talking about overall, then I feel there's a significant benefit. There is, I'm going to muddy the waters a little bit by floating a thought. I said this the first time around. It bothered me to put a bus stop there with a pull-off because that's a major bus stop, not just a regular bus stop, because there's no way to cross from the other side of the road to get to it, and there's not a huge demand there. We already have a bus stop at the corner of Brownell, and that one would warrant potentially as a shelter. And we have one at the New England Federal Credit Union, and that one has a shelter on the other side. And I would rather, if we have another bus stop, that it be halfway between, like near Commerce Street, rather than the location we're talking about. And because it doesn't have access from the other side of the street, it doesn't make sense to me to make a pull off and all that stuff. So, and I've been the Williston representative for Green Mountain Transit, or the alternate, since 2014, so for 9 years, and I ride that bus plenty. And so to me, it was an oversized solution. It's a good solution, but not in the right place for what it is. If Green Mountain Transit would agree, to me, the pull-off part, it's one thing to put a bus stop, it's another thing to build a pull-off and a pad.
Right.
And so to me, both the pull-off and the pad are optional, and to me, the bus stop ought to be at Commerce Street. Who knows, maybe someone will put a ice cream shop near there someday, and there might be people wanting to get off there.
Right.
So to me, the location of that bus stop doesn't ring true, especially for a stop that size. And I realize that muddies the water, but if we did reconsider it and that weren't part of it, it would perhaps allow you to put more money towards the stuff that we need more than we need a bus stop with a pull off in that location.
Or just moves to where it's more beneficial.
Yes, although it's either in your front yard or in someone else's land, which is hard, because to me, having connectivity of the path from Commerce Street to Brownell is huge. And we're not going to get it from the owners along there. And we don't have another way to get it. And so to me, that is a big benefit, but it needs to have a single intersection to happen. And so to me, that's the significant benefit. The bus stop is optional in mine. But again, that's my personal opinion, and it's muddying the waters, because I am truly conflicted.
So as far as the neighbors, and I won't say this with an absolute, but part of that process was me understanding some of their challenges with our current facility.
Yeah.
So every one of them has my cell phone and they have used it. But I can tell you that they haven't used it in over a year. Because we implement things and make the team aware that our actions have consequences, and we all want to be good neighbors. So we did put something in place that, and again, regardless of whether this went forward or didn't go forward, we still want to be good neighbors. So there is something in place for that.
So I just looked in the record, and there was a letter of support from Green Mountain Transit for a bus pull-off and shelter in that location.
Yes.
From the original process.
Yes, and what I was saying is if we could get, is if Green Mountain Transit agreed that we don't need one, even though they said it was a good idea to put one there. Again, because for me, having a major stop where you can't cross the street is a problem.
So you're suggesting have us pick up the pedestrian crossing costs, get rid of the bus stop.
Yeah, or if the bus stop would be on the far side of Brownell Road, that's where it would make sense to have that size of a stop.
That would be working with the same landowner that they were unable to work
They were
with.
their property.
Right.
I'm digging back in the archives of my memory. I remember the committee tossing around the idea of like a mid-block crossing, but
Yes.
V-Trans doesn't allow mid-block
Right.
crossings on Williston Road in this type of situation. My recollection from Green Mountain Transit was moving it from that east side of Commerce Street to this proposed location on the west side would be beneficial to them because of the proximity to the intersection. You don't want the bus too close or too far away. So I think they were pleased with this location and then moving it away from that east side of Commerce. But now that letter's a little over 2 years old. So if this were to move forward, we would want to
Yeah, so
revisit that.
that really is my personal opinion, which I would be happy to talk with Matt, Green Mountain Transit about.
Yeah, and on your earlier comment, I know there are a couple new planning commission members who weren't here for the original process. One of the main proposals as part of this expansion was some significant sound wall fencing of varying heights from 15, 10, and 6 feet in height. And this isn't just a typical fence, it's designed and constructed in a way that would have sound mitigating measures for the neighbors. There are some considerations about the height of the lighting on those buildings as well, that lighting on the side of the building would be a little lower and a little dimmer for the residential neighbors. And a sound study was done as part of the project as well, comparing existing to proposed conditions with the addition and the benefit of the sound wall. So there was a lot of work at that advisory committee level.
And I think it was good work. And the sound study and everything else was good.
Okay, so given the time, should we maybe take a straw poll? I mean, I want to provide Rick and Pierre with an idea on whether the commission would be amenable to moving forward, assuming, from what I understand, from everything Matt and Emily and Alex were saying, that we can get kind of everything done essentially at the same time at the expense of the NECS. So if that could happen, and if that would be okay with the applicant, would the planning commission be willing to move forward to see if this does in fact, or could provide a substantial benefit? I mean, is going to take a vote or a raise of hands? Or is that what the applicant is actually asking for from tonight's?
It would certainly be very helpful if we knew where you all stood with that set of guidelines that you outlined. That would be very helpful.
I think we've struggled to make the investment in public transit and pedestrian connectivity, especially in this zone. I'd be supportive of it. I think it's a good benefit. I think we've done a lot of the groundwork. I'd be supportive of it, but you know, I do take what staff says to heart, which is we're going to make this hard so that it's assured. And I think that really matters. But as a commission member, I'm certainly willing to put the work in.
Okay, and Jill, are you keeping your nay vote, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna keep that.
Okay, Ellie?
I think I'm interested in continuing the conversation for now.
Shayla?
I still want to see, I think, I just don't understand how the timing would work. Sorry to be very literal. So as long as I don't want to move forward. I don't want to say yes, I would vote yes until I could see that like, here's where we would have the checks. And like Matt was saying, this is where, you know, it would not be when you are all the way done with the building.
Yeah, to your point, like, but we could phrase the specific plan approval in such a way that it's, Emily and Matt, this is for you, that, you know, that essentially it has to be done at the same time and or before or right after. Is that
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's hard for us to say now, because it wouldn't be until that process is a go and we're working on it, where it's probably not an answer that just Matt and I are coming up with. We might want to consult with the public works director and the finance department, or maybe on the town attorney, to make sure that whatever mechanism it's going to be the best one. And we probably won't know that right now, or even like at a continuance. But I do think that that chicken and egg can be figured out as part of bringing the specific plan.
So we're not going to have a straw man to beat up on until the end of the process, is what you're saying, really. Like we're not going to show up at the next meeting and say, oh, here's how we'll probably look. Because we just don't know until we bring a lot more people in. So, you know, if we move forward with this, we're going to have to form a committee. That committee is going to come up with the proposed structure. The straw man will be discussed in there and come back to the planning commission and say, hey, look, this is how it will work to satisfy, say, Shayla's concern.
Right, or like, basically it's what that wording in chapter 7 enforcement and guarantees would say, that ensures the concurrency of both things and the legal mechanisms and the designs and permits that of when they happen. And I don't know how much even a committee would need to work on that. It would kind of be if this specific plan goes forward, we as staff would probably consult with a couple other folks to make sure that the steps are gonna happen at the same time in a way that everyone's in agreement upon. But I know to Matt's point, like his concern was it all falling on the zoning administrator, so maybe it's not put off to administrative permit, maybe it's part of the DRB's approval of discretionary permit, or the DRB retains final plan reviews. There's a whole gamut of things, but I wouldn't want to commit to anything until we have, you know, a couple extra eyes on it.
But the vehicle's there to accomplish that.
Yes.
Kate, how about you?
I think I would be willing to move forward to see if it will provide a substantial benefit. I think that the connectivity could really provide that, so done properly. And Chapin.
Yeah, so I'm ambivalent, and I think that it is a substantial benefit if it includes the signaling and crosswalk stuff at Brownell Road. To me, that's a substantial benefit right there, but it needs to be a guaranteed substantial benefit. And so I was, in my speaking out loud and muddying the waters, was trying to see if there was a way for you to have something you come through that say, yeah, we can guarantee that full cost. Because without that, we're in the same place we were, in my opinion. It's
Right.
And to throw into the muddying the waters piece. Because this requires approval not only from the town of Williston, but also the Agency of Transportation. There's no guarantee, we cannot guarantee anything gets built within that corridor until they've approved the plans and have issued an access permit. And so that's clearly one of the hurdles that is on our side of the table that needs to be met. And so it could be that we were all in agreement about all of this, but if V-Trans said, you know, we just don't want you to build this in our highway, we aren't going to allow it, then all things stop. So that's obviously another piece that has to be worked into the clockwork of how this works in terms of.
at least in my case, I accept their word that they would have approved it if the signaling were there at the Brownell intersection. And if that's, okay, in other words,
In any world,
yeah,
it's not guaranteed until the
Right.
permit's in hand and the appeal period is over. So I'm sure Matt would agree.
Yeah, and I would say those exact words.
I understand might not be able to go ahead, but I would be willing to make a specific plan based on the word of a trend.
I just wanted to be clear that all of us could agree, we could all get to that point, but we still have V-Trans as a partner to make happy also.
That's gonna be a shared risk, so it's like the risk for you is that you will lose the ability to, provide that shovel-ready project, and then won't get your project, your expansion approved because of that, and then the rest of the town is, you won't get that sidewalk connection and sidewalk.
Yeah, clearly.
So it is 7:55. We're a little over time on this one.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that most of the planning commission would be willing to review and to see, but I think that's all we can give you tonight.
And really, that's very, very helpful, and our main goal for coming was just to test those waters to see. I mean, if that straw poll looked differently, then obviously we'd have some very serious thoughts to discuss among ourselves, whether it'd be worthwhile going ahead with that kind of headwind. So thank you, and thank you for your input. We appreciate it.
If my answer wasn't clear, I would be a yes if we had guarantee of completion.
Yeah, and I think that's the linchpin that we're talking about. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having us, and we won't take any more of your time, so you guys can get out of here tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
So next up on the agenda is a very brief status update for the Glazer specific plan. So what I'm sharing on my screen, and Alex, I'll probably give you a moment, I'm gonna get to chat on this too, since you are the chair of the advisory committee. What I have on my screen is the revised site plan that the applicant has been working on. We're about halfway through. Their deadline is to get something back by the beginning of June. So far, the committee and applicant have been working very collaboratively together, me as well in that process. The applicant has been responsive, so making changes based on the charge. You'll notice that there's now a street connection onto the Mountain View Road as called for on the official map. A cul-de-sac with, I believe, 39 units, and then this lollipop loop would have 50 units. The open space has increased by a couple acres, that Mountain View Road open space. This site plan is zoomed in on the development, so what is missing is to the south on that far left of the image, there's more open space that would wrap around Mike and Tina Moss. We have heard from them that this configuration would work for their continued operations, both to have pasture and potentially some hay fields left. It looks like the project's going to be able to make that minimum 50-point score. The committee scored the project last week, has made some feedback on how the design could be tweaked in relatively minor ways in terms of some configuration things to better achieve some of the growth management criteria. But in general, there's been really good progress on, checking off items on the charge. I do note that we're still waiting to hear back from Public Works, Fire, and Police for their comments on this, particularly the more than 40 units on a single point of access. In terms of the CVSD, so there's a statement in the charge about comment from CVSD. Most of the committee, save for one person, has been comfortable with using that school district's 2022 demographic study, which looks at, the projected trends for school population over the next decade. And what the discussion really came down to was, the school district is a separate jurisdiction from the town. So even if this development or any development were to increase school population, it's the responsibility of the district to respond and not for the town to, manipulate its plans solely on another entity. So the committee's been working with that demographic study that shows the projected population trends. Lastly, I'll note that the commission and advisory committee should proceed without the input of the select board. There was a statement in the charge about getting some head nods from the select board. That was probably a bit of an overcommitment on my part. The select board can't really comment on potential real estate transactions. They have to do it in executive session. It gets into legal stuff. And they'll have the opportunity to comment on substantial benefit if and when they hold public hearings. But in generally, the select board's precedent is to take a planning commission recommendation very seriously on what they recommend. Alex, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, one correction, you on the number of units, it's 106 units total, not 89 units total. That you're quoting the number of condos, but the single family lots are added to that. Here's what I'll highlight from the plan. One, you'll all remember that the wetlands look completely different than this. In all seriousness, the wetland survey came in differently and the shape of the neighborhood changed significantly as a result of that. But the applicant has also come back and really taken the charge, especially on growth management scoring of the neighborhood, having a wider variety of housing, a lot more duplexes, triplexes, et cetera, in this, which helped with growth management score significantly. They have also committed to do 12 permanently affordable homes as part of this. So they're going to have more than 10% of the neighborhood will be permanently affordable, as in deeds. And they have taken the charge, to sort of preserve more green space. You'll remember the green space was only 12 acres. It's now 15 on the north side, same green space on the south side of the plan. So we feel like it's coming along. There are a few asks to correct some of the weirdnesses with this. For example, that community center, the small yellow block that's like, it's on the multi-use path, not really connected to either of these two neighborhoods that really have no connection to each other, largely because of the wetlands are making that nearly impossible. We've asked them to revise that plan, revise some of the neighborhood gardens that are like behind people's houses and stuff. But it's mostly about community space at this point. So this probably looks somewhat similar to what might come out of the end of the process, more so than what went in the beginning.
Mhm.
But it's still ongoing. There's still some revisions for them to make for the next meeting. Happy to answer any questions, but happy with the variety of units, happy with the permanently affordable, and happy with mixing the egress, some on the Mountain View, some onto Old Stage, and some of the other comments.
And you've been doing a great job as chair too. I must say.
Especially the one I showed an hour and a half late to.
That happens.
So, Kate, can I ask questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Why is the entrance off of Mountain View not at the highest point on Mountain View on that? Is there a reason why I'm assuming the neighboring property is just off the map on the top?
Yes, the Larson parcel.
Yeah, if you zoom in on that, so that is the highest point on Mountain View, I think.
Mhm.
And then there's like this 10-foot drop off from Mountain View into that land down there.
Okay, so it is there, so it's at the highest point.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
and there's this idea that we would have something akin to like a mini overlook park or something
Mhm.
built there, so that people could enjoy the view, not just when driving. That would have maybe some electric vehicle charging stations,
Yes.
things like that.
Mhm.
And then as well, there's, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a future connection there
Yes.
into the neighboring property on that road too.
Yeah, and that street's running along the Larson property, so, flexibility for
Mhm.
where that future right of way might connect.
So you get the connectivity and the bike path, and now you get a little bit of road connectivity as well.
There were some other discussions, like, this is just fluid, the parking lot may very well be on the other side of the path. There was some discussion about, well, I don't want to jump ahead, but about, exactly how would that green space be maintained?
Yeah,
Where the dog park
the
goes.
exact placement of the parking lot will be left to the DRB process, just to be clear, like we've tabled that discussion.
Mhm.
And how much discussion was there of dog park?
None.
Okay.
So
And-
that would have to come later.
How are you doing on the connection of the path connection east-west through the middle of the property?
Sorry, what, you're talking about the path connection on
To Northridge,
Old Stage Road?
to
the
Northridge,
crossing?
Old Stage Road to Northridge.
Yeah, no one has done anything on the Northridge connection in the back that you're talking
Yeah.
about. But we have the connection on Old Stage Road, which is near I forget which path outlets on Old Stage Road on the other side.
Yeah, so the path would loop around, and then this lollipop loop, the path would connect to Old
It
Stage.
comes out opposite Wildflower.
The public
Yeah,
works
yeah.
director has, in some of his comments been, well, of course, a discretionary permit, that intersection across from Wildflower, and then the path crossing a Mountain View Road. You have to plan for how that cross that road. Your comment about getting a path, from here towards Northridge. Substantial benefit statement is about open space, so we couldn't require that as part of their open space. This land, whether held privately with a floating easement or as it's proposed here as dedicated to the town, would keep that door open. So the charge for the committee and their focus has really been, are we keeping the door open for, say, working landscapes via Windswept Farm and this open space view shed? Is the site plan keeping that pathway open? Getting that path connection in reality would be a future step that the town would have to take after this process. And it could be very challenging, giving the forested area, potential wetlands, whether it's the applicant or the town applying for that state trail permit. It's a very challenging process. So that's not going to happen as part of this project, but the door is certainly left open for it.
So I feel shut down because from the beginning I said, because that's on our master map. And as a priority, I wanted to see that investigated as part of the specific plan.
We are still
At each
planning
step.
to have the site visit so we can look at that.
Yeah, and I've said I want to physically go as soon as
Yeah.
you can tell me I can walk on the
We're not
land
ready to
check
have
it
the
out.
site visit yet, but we will.
So to
We're
me,
still
that's an
planning.
essential component of the plan, and you're telling me it can't be part of it because what they said was the benefit was open space, but I thought the whole purpose of this was to make sure there was a significant benefit, and to me, that's a component of significant benefit. At least that's what I've said every time we've talked about this project, so I have a hard time accepting that that can't be part of this project.
It could potentially be part of this project. It hasn't been looked at yet. I think what Emily's saying is the current charge doesn't require them to look at that, so it's probably not considered in here. I do plan to get everyone out for a site visit. It's not ready
I
for
thought
it
we
yet.
put something in the charge about it. but-
No, we did not. That one came
But again,
up
that's gonna be-
after the approval
that's gonna
between
be
you and I
town-
privately.
No, I brought this up at every single time this has been discussed in public, I brought it up.
It's gonna be Williston managed land, so I mean, again, for the sake of the substantial benefit, this is where, again, we're focused on that.
No, I'm focused on the developer spending the money to figure out whether we can make a connection, not saying, oh, the town can do that later. Because this, that it has to be something they deliver to us, even if what they deliver is a plan. I feel like that should be part of the plan.
Could that be added, just a query to Ken and to Jack and say, look,
Yeah, again,
I mean, but understand that, like, we've had a lot of challenges with building trails through wetlands, as you're aware from.
Oh, yeah, I'm not, the problem for me is not exploring it. The
Yeah.
problem for me isn't saying that it can't be done once we explore it. I just don't like being shut down.
Yeah.
no, and again,
Right, so that multi-use path is shown, and Melinda, you know official map better than I do, as a tier 2 multimodal facility as that dashed line.
Yeah. Yep.
And frankly, it's been rerouted on that map. It was not connecting to Wildflower, it was connecting to Old Stage Road near Turtle Pond. I don't know, maybe we're looking at something different.
Are you looking at the
This
blue
is-
one, the blue dotted line?
Yes, there,
Yeah.
that's the one, that's to me the line that we are bound to just, that I have assumed and asked and thought we would explore as part of this project.
is that, that's like on the extreme boundary, is that even part of the?
It's on the extreme boundary, that's an extreme boundary of Southridge,
Right,
but it's not gonna follow that route for sure.
okay.
It's saying there should be a connection from here to here. And what I want to explore is there a way to wind through there that is satisfactory? It may even go up over the top of Northridge where there already is a right of way. We don't, but to somehow be able to get from Old Stage to Coyote,
without going along Mountain View.
right?
I mean, I agree with Chapin. I think that connection is very, would be very, very beneficial for the town. And he did mention it pretty much at every meeting.
The
Um,
big issue with it has been that this is, everything that's shown basically in green here is wetland. That's why it hasn't been explored. It's not shutting you down. There is a huge amount of class 2 wetland in
And-
what is shown
and-
in green here.
Within that, there's a lot, but for instance, as the applicant has pointed out, the area behind the Moss Farm that looks green there is not all wetland. They pointed that out, that they could be building houses there, and so it's a value to donate to the town.
Yeah, but they're not going, the area up to the left there, to the west, that's the area that is gonna be left for the horse to be in pasture. It's gonna be the 17 acres, that's not
So-
going to be.
So let me just say, I'm totally aware of all the issues. And I want to explore what the possibilities are.
Noted. I'll bring it to the committee.
So I have a question about the, so the path that you have proposed on the revised plan, it is like this one over here that's going through that loop and it goes directly over to Wildflower Circle, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so I think Emily mentioned this, but I just want to clarify. would this include putting up like a flashing crosswalk type thing like they have further down? Because, I mean, I think that would be necessary.
Yeah, we suspect that Bruce is going to insist on that as part of the DRB process, but it's beyond the scope of the planning commission.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be what would be looked at discretionary permit, you know.
And to me, that path is designed as serving that development. That if you're already biking on Mountain View Road, you can go just another 100 yards and turn right on Old Stage Road and be on a rec path. And so the value of that there is for that. To me, that's an enhancement to the scoring for what's happening within the development. And also when we have rec paths, I don't want them to go on streets. This is doing what the problem I have with the Essex Lions Church property plan is you have a rec path and you have it go on a street. And if you're trying to take young kids on a bike path with you or something, you're suddenly dealing with driveways and whatnot. And so to me, this is not that path is not anything that's part of what the benefit, that's not on our official map. It's not.
Yeah,
connecting
the
things
path
that
isn't
value other
considered
than-
part of the substantial benefit. That's
Yeah,
not part of
good.
it.
So I just want to be sure that nobody's thinking that's
Yeah.
A substantial benefit.
Substantial benefit here is the preservation of the view shed and the preservation of the working landscape, the view shed being the one at the north and the working landscape at the south.
Yes.
And this map that I have is from the committee process. It's the older iteration
Right.
of the site plan, but just trying to illustrate official map with what they're proposing. So I guess one question for when Alex and I go back to the committee is like, what are you looking for in terms of like a deliverable on the path stuff?
I've been waiting for the opportunity to walk the land and explore.
I think I've got the deliverables, right? One, we'll do a site visit. Two, this plan should extend to the full length of the land and show the potential for a path there, and we should decide whether that'll be required as part of the bill. Right?
Yeah, for me, it's part of the substantial benefit, and if we don't explore it, we don't know if it can be part of the benefit. So, by the way, I worry about traffic turning off of Old Stage Road. I mean, off of
Yeah,
Mountain
remember,
View.
this is the old one too.
I know. I worry about traffic coming off of Mountain View, the hazard of somebody taking a left turn there where the sight lines aren't great and so forth. But I like the plan better, much better. It's all, the issue I have a little bit is that a lot of it is what I would think would happen in growth, in what do you call it, in scoring, and bringing its score up as a project, just to make it through the normal process. I'm not sure, other than the original offer being of 11 acres going to 15 acres, I'm not sure what has been added other than things that are enhancing its score as a development, which would have been done anyway through the development review process.
Sure, it would have been done anyway. And then one thing I did neglect to mention, by the way, is they did change their ask in terms of the growth management. They're slowing down the development to a maximum of 18 units per year over the course of 6 years. And Emily did an interesting analysis for the rest of the staff. I'm not sure who did it, but Emily presented an analysis that showed that is within the slack of what we have actually generally approved and hasn't ended up gotten built over the last decade, I think 8 years. Yeah. That, you know, so their ask is relatively minimal in the sense that an approval of it probably won't impact the amount that gets built beyond what we had already approved in any significant way, unless trends change significantly and the full amount of growth management ends up getting built every year, which hasn't happened in many, many years, even through this bull market. So they've slowed down the build speed on that. And then, the Mountain View entrance, they had similar concerns actually to yours, but that was part of the charge. And part of the charge was getting up their score to be, instead of a 30s in growth management, to get it above 50. So that's why it looks exactly like what they would have had to do with growth management anyway.
Right, and I would want to note that the multi-use path alignment where it's shown here is still pretty concept. What we heard from Mike Moss was that if you were to continue to want to hay that view shed, a path through the middle might not work, so it may run more parallel to Mountain View Road. Whereas right now it's kind of in the middle. It might be closer to
Yeah.
Mountain View for haying.
Yeah, and everybody's been sort of back and forth on, well, our job's not to preserve hayland for Mike Moss, but that has have the added benefit of maintaining the land around the path in a way
Right.
that's lowers the cost for the town, so it's.
Mhm. Yeah, so that the land would be offered to the town for maintaining a view
Yes.
shed and working landscape.
Yes. You can see the disadvantage of being too close to Mountain View in terms of snow and everything. And you can see the neighbors not liking it running right next to their backyards.
I mean,
So it's hard.
they could still hay it if there's a path. in the middle.
Yeah.
Because of it might lift, it might be significantly higher because of the way that land sort of dips in. was the
There are,
concern.
again,
Oh,
Mike will
okay.
certainly give clarification, but there'll be diminishing returns depending on where that path is. And you simply cannot have haying machinery to be close to a path like that. So if it doesn't get moved. It's a matter of, I think for him, because it's either you have a haying equipment or you don't, as I understand it.
And the exact placement is probably DRB process.
Right,
Again,
yeah.
This goes beyond, so the planning commission is just sort of saying, hey, yes, to the sort of general placement of this, then it goes to DRB.
Yeah.
The only part of the DRB it gets exempted from is that growth management scoring and the lot.
Mhm.
This is,
They're not asking for exemption from DRB overall.
this is minor.
I
but
do
it's
also
good.
think it would be important for, and like, I don't know what exactly the dips are. I'm assuming you could see the view from anywhere you put that path in that space, but I would just want to make sure we didn't move the path somewhere where suddenly couldn't see the view for haying purposes.
Yeah, and I think that was one of Mike's comments was if you move it closer to Mountain View Road, the elevation is higher and it would have a better view. So I think that's something that, the committee will do a site visit. We'll probably walk around out there. It'll be finalized a discretionary permit.
This is minor, but it should continue to the edge of the property going to the west at the top. It shouldn't end at the access road.
Right there.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
should, that your property ends further north or further west towards the top. But I think that's just a mapping thing.
Have the number of units proposed changed?
Yeah, it's decreased, I think, by 6 units, and gone down then up. I can't remember what the original was.
106. And I think there's gonna be a little bit of flux in there, maybe even as it approaches discretionary permit with the DRB. As it's proposed, it's below that allowed density.
It was 93 when we formed the committee.
Was it 93 then? So it's up a little bit?
Yeah, it started at 100, went to 93, now is 106. And I crafted the charge to have that plus or minus, because we knew as it was gonna go through this iterative process, it would change. I think the stopping point would be is if we're now going over the allowed density and maybe looking for an exemption from density, that it would become an issue.
Well, and it's not an issue for me, given that there's affordable included.
And I think that may be part of the reason why the numbers have gone up.
Yeah, I think
A
so.
wider variety of housing too. The
Yeah.
original plan was much more sort of single family home, traditional.
And I think Emily emphasized in the meeting that, it's a matter of getting the footprint down and then, exactly how the configuration of those would be with. And the builder was very open to all kinds of options, but
Yeah, and originally, I think you're reminding me of a point, there were more duplex, the duplexes that originally provided were a larger duplex model.
Mhm.
These are a more compact duplex model.
virtual, this is affordability.
Mhm.
Does anyone else on the commission have any comments or questions? Okay.
Thank you for the update.
Of course. It's my job. That's why they pay me the big bucks.
So next is housing bylaw.
Okay, I'm gonna close out of these. Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
did you all bring your phones? Or
You have some
that
hard
works,
questions
yeah.
in there.
Yeah, so the idea of this is to just get you thinking about the things that are being you know, the things that are considered as part of inclusionary zoning and the various like decision points there are. And as I kind of looked over this survey, I realized, well, maybe, you know, nobody's gonna have any idea like what to, you know, so you can do the survey if you want, we can talk about these things, and then you can do the poll. Or we can just talk about these things, whatever you think would be most helpful, and then maybe we can do the poll. some
I
other
thought we
time.
talked about, no, there's the things on the Mentimeter poll were, except with a few exceptions, the things we talked about last time.
Yeah, let me see, is this the
Do
one?
we don't need the Mentimeter app, we're just gonna go to a website, right?
That's not
Correct.
right.
Yeah, what is the code though? It says enter the code or use the QR, but it doesn't actually have the code.
Hold on.
Oh, is the link in the agenda?
It's in the document. There's a QR code and here you can scan this QR code with your camera app. It'll take you to it, but
Where's Mentimeter? Oh, okay, here it is.
Thanks.
does it tell you what the code number is?
No,
67242468.
but I didn't have to put it in. I've got the first question already.
Yeah, I can't point a camera at my own screen.
Oh.
Okay.
I got the code.
All
I'm
right.
so sorry. Can you say it again or put it in the chat?
Yeah, I can put it in the chat. Let's see. Somehow I can figure this out. 67242468.
Thank you. Got it.
Yeah,
I'm on the unit count threshold, because I think that might be where you were.
right.
Melinda, when I signed on, how do I get back to the beginning? Or will you? pull
It
me back
should
to the-
automatically take you back to the beginning.
I do have an option to go to slide.
Yeah, click that then.
I don't.
There we go.
I'm in present mode. How do I advance?
I think, do you have an arrow on your keyboard? Or an enter?
Oh yeah, there it goes. All right, never mind. Okay, so that's the instructions.
Oh, there's the code.
And so are you at the slide IZ required or incentivized?
Yes.
Okay. So we talked about this last time, and I think that there seemed to be a general consensus, but go ahead and if you would just so that we can kind of review that.
There's just one option that's not on there.
What was that?
The alternative to growth management everywhere but the ARZ.
Ooh, okay.
Same idea.
Mhm. Oh. 3 and 3.
Yeah, I was in the 3 category just because of complication for staff to have to deal with 2 different systems.
And we can deal with anything.
As long as they're separate, you're
Yeah.
only looking at one.
Right,
But
right.
then people are gonna ask you, so what if I went the other way? What's the good?
I can cross my eyes together, but I can't look in 2 different directions.
I will make a note from that specific plan process that it's become very obvious that we do not incentivize affordability as part of the growth management score nearly enough.
Yes.
Those like whatever, I think it's 5 or 10
Yeah.
points maximum. You get, I think it's 5 points,
Mhm.
whatever. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I think this is the replacement for it.
This is a replacement for it, but if you're gonna do an alternative, like we should still have, that should still count in your growth management score.
agree.
Energy efficiency is a mess. And it's just,
Yes.
it's
we
not
know
a
that.
thing. And affordability is really not incentivized at all.
Mhm.
I agree.
Okay,
Thank you, Kate, for letting us kind of chat.
yeah, all right, so shall we move on, or,
Sure.
okay.
You're gonna save these results, right?
Yeah,
help
I
us.
guess after we do the whole survey, can we save the results? Is there a way to do that?
Yeah, it just automatically stays.
Okay, cool. So this slide has to do with like, yeah, what the threshold should be for requiring affordable. So how big a project is.
By the way, I would support one number in the form-based code, another number in the residential, but.
Agree with that.
And do you have any like ideas like for those thresholds?
Yeah, to me, in the form, yeah. Looking at all the stuff we looked at,
Yeah.
if you get over, that's a percent. I had thought about this before and I can't remember my thinking. I think, no, I don't have a good response.
Okay, that's all right. We'll
I
just-
voted for 10.
So it seems like there's a strong preference for 10 units. And then the minimum percentage affordable.
This is the one where if we make too much, we might not get projects. And if we make it too low, we don't get enough affordable housing.
So, yeah, I mean, essentially, and there is a risk of asking for too much, especially at the very beginning of a new rule like this. And that if you really kind of shut down production, whereas you could always start with a lower number, and then if you're getting a whole lot, then you could increase it later.
Yeah, but like, you want to incentivize people to go above and beyond, like, so in the growth management process, a good example might be, for example, 1 point for every percent that is, or 5 points for every 5% that is affordable. So if somebody wants to get 30 points by making 30% affordable,
Yeah.
more power to them, right? Like, that's a terrible example because it should, be geometric and things like that, but you get my point.
And we'll hit this a little bit in the next couple of slides,
Yeah, okay, so,
because what is affordable?
right, all right, so 3, yeah. Slight preference for 10. All right, so this is a little bit hard to read. So these are incentives, additional like incentives for the inclusion of affordable units. Such as, and this you can, fee waivers, density bonus, varying depending on the number of inclusionary units, parking reduction, expedited review, no growth management. Other.
How meaningful are
This is if
fees?
it's not required.
This is, well, it could be if it's required or incentivized. I guess let's assume it's if it's incentivized. So like what additional, like in our case, we're sort of assuming there's going to be this no growth management alternative. So what other additional incentives, if any, should we have?
It's an interesting thing. I didn't check no growth management because I believe we should get rid of growth management and have this in the form-based code district.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I didn't look at that as a choice, but
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting.
What's interesting about it?
Well, I guess there seems to be a pretty solid consensus that there should be additional incentives. And then no growth management is kind of like the de facto one, but expedited review. Some were in favor of parking reductions, density bonuses, not so much fee waivers, and one other. So the next slide.
But I just want to clarify that, if it's required, then I guess going back to Alex's point, we could incentivize more units or higher percentage or whatever. We could incentivize by doing some of these
Yeah,
things.
that's true.
I also, though, agree with Chapin that in form-based code district, I don't want growth management if we're gonna do this. Yeah, it's just a little, yeah,
Mhm,
squishiness here.
for sure.
Come on, you don't want a Williston Four Seasons condotel?
Should we ask the person who had an other what the other is?
Yeah, that's the next.
I know I'm unreasonable, Alex.
So, yeah, so for whoever entered other, or if people have ideas about other incentives, just.
Does anyone have any other incentive ideas?
Alex is typing.
Well, just type in what I already said out loud. Give more, if you're gonna keep the growth management, give more bonus for it. If somebody's got 20% affordable housing, they need a lot more points than 5.
You have to hit submit.
Yeah, I know, you've heard me.
Oh, okay.
No, spit it so it gets done.
Other ideas?
Oh,
Wait for his answer.
I see. I was supposed to hit enter. Getting used to this. Whoops, hold on.
Oh, who's doing tax increment financing?
That's me.
Uh-huh. Give more bonus for more affordable housing, right? I mean, so certain places, certain towns that require inclusionary zoning do also include these incentives. Now, it's hard to wrap my mind around, well, so why are they including the incentives if it's required, but.
Well, you do it for more though, right? You say 5% is the minimum, but if you go to 10%, you get this, and if you go to 15%, you get this other thing, and if you go to 50%.
Yeah,
So you could do, you're right,
Do
Alex,
that.
you could have an inclusionary zoning provision that's sort of a
baseline.
medium bar, and at the higher bar, you get more units per acre, or another story, or a tighter setback, or.
mhm.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's what I was trying to say before, is there'd have to be a reason if it's required.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
gonna put another one in just a second.
okay.
Sitting on the specific plan and having them come back and give us 10% affordable units has just showed me how powerful the incentives and the requirements are. We're just gonna
Additional
get 12 of these units. we
Another
want.
story, yeah.
That wasn't on the list.
Mhm. Okay. And then this is just the term of affordability should be perpetual, 100 years, 50 years, 20 years.
Ian, you're our unofficial adopted member of the planning commission for the last few
I'm not
weeks.
voting.
So, do we, I haven't formed an opinion on this because I don't know sort of the science, the data on. It seems like you make it perpetual and then things can change so much that it doesn't make sense. And then somebody has to do something legislative to undo or, but on the other hand. Okay, I'll go with the majority because
I mean,
I don't want it to be temporary.
yeah,
I guess if I can say anything is, again, and I know you already approved the minutes, but these are fantastic. I'm so glad we have these from the last meeting. We have to discuss a lot. It's more to do with, especially in the residential zone, when you're removed from services. You can have affordable housing, but how do you expect people to get to where they need to go? And to get the resources they need, whether it be groceries and so forth. So again, I'm because of the fact we live in such a spread out geographic area, and we are still in, this is what was often recently very rural part of Chittenden County. It's very different than South Burlington, Winooski, and so forth, where they can make these approaches, make these work on these ideas to build up denser housing, more affordable housing. But I would, again, it's going to have to be ultimately a matter of whether it's the town or the state improving infrastructure at the same time as the housing is done. I mean, that's not.
I wish we had the power to do
Well, I know,
that.
but
Because
don't.
my concern with that line of thinking, just to be clear, is that line of thinking is often used as a justification to create ghettos, to say
No,
all
okay.
affordable housing.
Okay, I
goes
realize that, but that's also because of the fact we have such a large amount of linear space, right? Compared to Winooski or South Burlington,
Yeah, just be
the
careful.
town center. I understand there's a danger there, but, you know, now, how are we going to address it? We can't simply say, we're gonna have affordable housing, where you have to walk 3 miles to get to groceries, because some people may want to do that. What's the point of having affordable housing if people can't get where they need to go?
It's the wrong question at the wrong time, though, Ian. I apologize for saying that.
That's right.
And we
But
covered
it's
it
already,
last time.
but that's already the kind of development principle that's happened. in some parts of-
Programmatically, we're trying to get started with some micro transit that would be a way for people to get around. We are making connectivity with rec paths and so forth. And we already have made the zoning for the form-based code area will pretty much guarantee that people can walk.
Sure, I'm talking
So
about.
now we're talking just about the residential, because we're not saying to do this in the agricultural, and that's 10, we're saying start with 10 units. So your concern is in the residential district, how are
Yes.
people who have affordable houses going to get to services? And I'm just saying, though, that will evolve. I'm assuming that will evolve because we as a town have been committed to making things walkable, and we're working on transportation. So I feel like it's like somebody saying we shouldn't investigate a path because there's wetlands. You know, to me,
Right, but
yes, there's gonna be obstacles.
planning is planning. It's not just housing. It's like, you know,
Right.
what supports it, right?
Yeah, let's just keep an eye on the time. Shayla, what would,
Yeah, I thank you, Kate. I was just gonna say, I feel like we talked about this last time and it's also Vermont, and any like mobile home park you go by, people have cars and still need affordable homes. I don't want to get stuck on this one.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is just, and this may be kind of hard to wait, I don't know. This is kind of squishy. So it's really the, eligibility for rentals and for sale homes.
I'll say in the end, I would be happy with something that says 5% of units have to be at minus 80%, or 10% at one of these middle ones, or 25% at the right-hand one. You know, to me, we could somehow have levers so that you could be anywhere in there, but you'd have to do a larger percent of them as you move towards the right.
Yep. As long as it's worded more clearly than current growth management, where it's like a comma and an and that sets the whole algorithm.
Yeah.
Now, what's the state definition?
The state has a definition of something called an affordable housing development, and they use 120 for ownership units and they use 80 for rental.
The third one there.
So it's kind of interesting that they have either end of the scale, whether it's a rental or an ownership unit. But I think it reflects the feasibility of creating each kind, basically.
Thank you. Ellie?
How is the AMI on sale calculated? Like, is that like assuming a 30-year mortgage at a 5%
Yes.
rate or something like
So,
that?
so the deed restriction we currently use, the applicant has to show us a readily available financial instrument. It's with the purchase of no more than 1 point. It's a generally available
So
interest rate.
The price moves with interest rates. So in the last
Yes.
6 months, you
Absolutely.
can charge a lot more for that house.
Yep.
Oh, yes. I mean,
Or a lot less for that house.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yes.
a lot less.
And
Interest rates have gone up.
It's been a problem.
yeah, I mean, what has actually happened is a home that we thought was actually being built well below the affordability limit is coming in above the affordability limit. And literally from the day the home is permitted to the day it's ready to occupy, you know, the stuff we saw over the last 18 months. And there are clauses in the covenants that we use that sort of deal with that. We're working with council, hopefully to get a more refined one for the next one, because
Wow, rates are going up again tomorrow.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's a
the
real
problem.
challenge, and what I would say is, you can do all of this, and you will get something different than if you just let it all be market, but there is a degree of uncertainty around setting those price limits. And you kind of look at it and go, well, we wanted this unit to sell at 100% median affordable. It ended up selling at 105% median affordable. But it's very likely, as everything increases in price around it, to slide back down before the next sale happens. So I think where we got, after a lot of head scratching between Melinda and I managing a few of those permits, was it's going to come out in the wash in a couple of years. But the numbers may not be perfect the first time that new home is sold.
Does that need to be codified, or do you have enough flexibility in the code to sort of say, yeah, 105's fine?
Well,
We're working on the covenant language to like codify it more, I think.
without getting really technical, Alex, there's some language in the covenant about the person who's building the house's capital costs. And basically, you're not supposed to ever make somebody sell a house for less than they bought it for. So the developer is included as the first owner in the way those covenants are today. So the developer would do an affidavit of costs where they say, you know, I said I was going to be able to build this thing for 410. I built it for 425. I'm going to sell it for 425. And the covenants that all of our surrounding communities use, generally our attorney said, yeah, they all do that. It doesn't feel right, but you treat the person who builds the house just like you treat the first owner. And what they bought the house for is their affidavit of costs. We may tighten that up more in the next set of covenants that the DRB approves, now that we're aware of that challenge.
Can they include infrastructure costs in that?
They included,
Yeah.
they included, you know, fair share of land purchase. So it really throws the idea that the market unit is supposed to subsidize the affordable unit out the window. And we're working on trying to come up with an implementation strategy that better meets what I think most people's understanding of an inclusionary project is, which is, yeah, you take a hit on the inclusionary unit and you make a little more money on the market unit.
Yeah, you have to have a formula like, you know, take the total cost of all development and divide it, you know, it can, you know, your cost can't be more than half
Right.
of the average cost of one unit or something.
Right, you can count some of that, but not 100%. So anyway,
You made me very sad I asked this question.
Sorry.
we're working with our lawyer on it. Let me just put it that way, because we do want it to be more effective than it currently is.
Can I ask, well, 1 second, can I ask a question? If the person who chose the 80% 120, would you lean towards, which side would you lean towards? Because I mean, just to see, like, because are we equal on 3 and 3, or are we more like 4 and 2? Because that gives a better idea.
Yeah, okay, that was me. I am. I really want it to work. And I mean, I think obviously I've been very committed to the affordability side of things. And so I am very attracted to the 80% for everything. But I want the development to happen, and I want the homes to be built. And I am worried that if we make it too tight, it won't happen. So I think I would go with the 100%. But knowing that I would love to get to 80, but I am concerned that we don't have a good handle on exactly how this is gonna fly.
I'm sure that I'd like it to be a sliding scale. It's like our development unit equivalent, our DUE. To me, if we say it has to be 5% or 10% affordable, you would get a full credit. If it was under 80%, you get a half a credit or 3/4 if it were, you know, to me, it would be a sliding scale. And so you have an affordable unit equivalent.
Oh, boy.
That if they're, you know, if you're at 120, yeah, I think we want to make it so that we incentivize as much as possible. And there may be situations where people want to do a few units at a really low price, and the other place where they would rather do more units at a higher price.
I just hate the idea of splitting it, so it's one rentals on one side and sales on another. I just,
Uh-huh.
to me, that
Yeah.
feels messed up.
Mm. You mean because of just like, the poorer people have to rent, they can't own?
Yeah, exactly. You're making a new bar to ownership for, like, sort of saying like, hey, you're poor, so you know, you're gonna have to rent. You're gonna have to be a slave to somebody else for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Unless you can come up with like 50% more money. It seems crazy.
Yeah. Hmm. Okay. Shall I go to the next one?
I like your idea about the signs. As much as they.
As much as-
I think it's-
So then there's this,
Yeah.
some towns use this payment in lieu option, like, you don't, if you're not building affordable, then you need to pay us like a per unit cost. And that would go into.
And to me, that funds
housing
our,
trust fund.
our housing trust fund that lets us do public benefit projects.
Mhm.
Do we, I gotta ask this question, if people have more experience, is the government actually good at using this money?
No, we would use it.
You mean-
Pay-
you
pay
mean
it to the town.
towns? Like, do
Yeah,
they,
is
are
the
they?
town as a government? That's what I'm
Well,
saying.
oh, yeah, 'cause-
Are we good at deploying that money? Or, you know, oftentimes take $500,000, put it in the hands of the government, have it spend it on housing, and you get half as much housing as if you just ask the private developer to spend that same.
So our environmental reserve fund has been extremely well managed and is really well supported. And I'm assuming our affordable housing fund would be similarly managed and supported. Because it's the same basic idea. You know, the town is out of the operational budget. And in this case, out of a payment in lieu, putting money aside to support the programs that we would do probably in concert with the Chittenden County Housing,
The Champlain Housing?
Champlain Housing Commission.
I think there's like some different ways that housing trust funds have been used. Some are just leveraging funds from outside organizations like matching funds. Some is like using it to support first buyer home down payments or something like that is another way of using it. I mean, there's a variety, I think if it was well funded, I think the money would definitely be used.
Leveraging it for matching grants and stuff is what appeals to me, that is that we might be able to get more out of it than just the dollar value that we are getting from the developer who isn't gonna do affordable.
Yeah, I think there's like Melinda's point that there are things towns can, like if we just go and try to build a house,
Yeah.
you're right.
Yeah.
We can't build as much or as good of a house as somebody who builds houses for a living. But if we take ownership of a distressed property through tax title, which only a town can do, and then we spend some trust fund money to remediate it, and then we hand it to someone who builds houses at a discount, then we're doing something that only a town can do. And I think the trick, and this would be a task with staff support for the Housing Trust Committee that will ultimately exist in Williston, is to identify those things. What can you do that's, you know, seed money, catalyst money? In South Burlington, one of my favorite things it is, they have this form-based code. They have these, you know, relatively lofty design standards. And there was a fourplex housing project where the developer was given some money from the Housing Trust Fund to cover the additional cost of the nicer design, basically. So they built at the cost of building a very basic, you know, box essentially. And they were able to make it comply with the higher design standards with a little bit of money from the Housing Trust Fund. So, you know, I think what's worked well with the ERF, and the town's been really good at knowing when those opportunities are coming, seeking them out, prioritizing how it spends the money.
They changed my note.
Yes. We don't just go like to a realtor and say, we're looking to buy some open space. Because anybody could buy better, could do better than us if we did that. You're absolutely right.
And it'd be lumpy too, like we don't spend that ERF money every year, like a catamount is a once in a lifetime thing, so it might be several years, and then there's like a major, you know, partnership where it's leveraged.
Right.
How many more questions do we have? Just looking at the time. on this?
You know, don't feel like you have to get through all the questions, like we can save some for the following meeting, like it's split up into two, and I think this might be getting towards the end of the inclusionary zoning part, and then the rest of it, it has to do with other housing supportive amendments, which, you know, we could totally save that for the next meeting or the meeting after.
Okay.
You know, because it is getting.
I had no opinion on this one when I read through this, and it wasn't something I understood that I don't think we discussed this before.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, so this, you know, I don't know, it's like I think it's maybe just Burlington that where the payment in lieu differs according to the size of the
Yeah.
project. It's kind of a silly question, but you know, it's
Is this the idea
something
that
to consider. Right?
bigger projects have to pay more?
Yeah, bigger projects pay more per unit than smaller projects.
I think the idea is that bigger projects should have, by their size, more opportunity to work to require a number of
Right.
homes in, and if they're not, they're really making a choice.
Mhm.
Whereas somebody who's building, I don't know what's their smallest project that's subject to inclusionary in
I think it
Burlington.
might be 5.
So if you're building a triplex next to a duplex,
Yeah,
it really might make sense to pay in lieu. And the city might look at that and say, yeah, it would be really hard for you to provide the inclusionary unit in this project. But this guy over here who's building, 200 units can probably figure out a way to get these in there.
yeah,
So
so,
he's gonna pay a lot more
yeah,
for not building them than you are.
Another argument for that bar, 5, 10 units, is there sort of being sufficiently high.
Well, yeah, and we've talked about, the project size exemption as well here.
mhm. Okay,
Great.
so. Right, 5 and 1. Should we move on?
Yep.
So then we're off to the other, so maybe we save this part for the next, instead of getting into this. Is that what you all think?
We have 8 minutes left.
Oh, there's 8 minutes.
In for a penny, in for a pound. huh?
Do we have anything else on the agenda?
This is it.
This is
I
it?
think this is it, so we could go
Let's
through
steam ahead,
some if you
because
want.
we can always come back to it.
Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay. All right. So exemptions from growth management. And so this is just like whether you disagree or agree with these options. Conversion of pre-existing commercial buildings to residential uses.
So this
Everybody
assumes we have,
strongly
this
agrees.
assumes we have growth management,
No, I don't.
Yeah.
right? So if we have growth management,
You can't actually say,
Well, some of these, like
Disagree.
we might not
It's
be
not
doing
working.
inclusionary zoning and like
because I haven't hit submit
RZD
yet.
or RZD. So like the
Only one
small
person
unit
has submitted.
dwellings.
That's 5
Well,
total
that's
points.
I get it.
Uh,
Other
Average
parts of
points or
town.
whatever.
yeah,
That don't have
That was-
inclusionary.
It was tricky.
Right.
I'm not sure I understand the ARZD, workforce housing and ARZD. Can somebody just think that out
feels like
loud?
farm worker housing.
Oh, I get what it is. I'm just
So
like,
like,
I'm not sure I
say,
can wrap my brain around
say
if
there's
it's
like-
good or bad.
there's like I don't know, I'm guessing, like, if there's like an existing barn, somebody wants to convert it into, I don't know, for housing units for their farm workers, or if they want to build like a structure with
But like,
4 units.
and we're worried that they might charge higher rent for those barn bunks than 80% of the median
well,
income.
this would be you've got this as exemption from growth
Yeah, this-
management, right?
This isn't like, has anything to do necessarily with. the
Oh,
farm.
sorry, yeah, there you go, I lost that thread.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, we're breaking off of inclusionary zoning and. Yeah. Yeah, this is more like allowing some of those smaller projects that are now subject to growth management to be not subject to growth management, like those 2-lot splits and so forth. Okay.
I'm the negative Nelly here, I drug everything down by voting.
One thing I'll note about this question is, some of these talk about the size of project that would be exempt and some don't. So
Yeah,
for the ones that don't, like workforce housing in the ARZD, a 5-unit versus a 50-unit might make a difference for people. So that's, I tend to envision it as more like the 5-unit, but if somebody says, well, I mean, there was a time where New England Theological Seminary is, the former Pine Ridge School, we were approached by somebody who was looking to do housing for ski resort workers there.
oh.
And it was like, well, yeah, that is workforce housing. There's certainly a need, but I'm not sure we want to plunk like 150 people who take a bus to Stowe every day in kind of the middle of nowhere. As opposed to a small apartment building for a couple folks who work on a farm.
I thought the same thing about the conversion of pre-existing commercial buildings. I can't think of a commercial building like this, but like where Homeland Security is.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, oh, I'm gonna turn that into 200 apartments or whatever. I don't know how many apartments fit in that building. They bought that and the poly building and the whatever. I sure want that in growth management. But I mean, if they're gonna convert a commercial building that turns into 3 units.
Or like one thing, it would be a hotel conversion, you know, like to residential. Of course, that's coming in a later question related to density, but yeah, so definitely certain size constraints would need to be considered for any of these. Okay, and then this is where the hotel conversion is mentioned as, and where I'm thinking is in the Gateway South.
Hurricane Lane.
Hurricane Lane, there's a density limit that would prevent a hotel conversion from working because it'd be too dense for the area. And then the second is really just kind of, if you have like a 2-acre existing lot, just allowing what would fit on the lot and meet the setback requirements and the requirements for.
What are the setback requirements? I lived in Seattle. They had a rule sort of similar to this, but it was, I think it was 5 acres. And so every development became 5 acres, and the houses, there was 6 feet between me and my neighbor's house in a 5,000 square foot home. And it was
Wow.
like that all over Seattle, like it became the standard. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's 10 foot.
isn't the whole point of maximum density requirements?
That's why-
Stop exactly.
That's why we have a bunch of houses on half-acre lots.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I had 0.18 or something, 0.19 with a 5,000 square foot house on it. Just became crazy. The house is now $2.5 million, by the way.
Let's keep going.
No wonder they built them so close together.
Wasn't when I bought it.
Yeah. So on that second one, it is with the caveat that all the other dimensional standards would be met. And there's other things you might think about on small lots, like this imagines that you could do what you just described, Alex, where there's multiple structures. Another thing would be where it's all in one structure, which means, or where it's all in one structure with a footprint no greater than 3,000 square feet, et cetera. So there's, you don't have to think about all of that right now, but sort of the standard zoning levers that we can pull around things like that, you can think about. The theory I have behind the small lot one is sort of, I can sign a permit tomorrow for someone to build a 5,000 square foot house with 8 bedrooms and 6 bathrooms in it on an existing lot. And there's no DRB review, there's no growth management, there's no nothing. But the second that becomes more than one house, it's subdivision, it's growth management, it's 18 months, it's public hearings and letters to your neighbors and everything, and literally the exact same building. And so for folks as a thought exercise, is there a version of that scenario where you go, I really don't care if this is 1 house or 3 houses inside.
The way this is worded, somebody could subdivide their 5 acres down into 2-acre lots and then they could get away from density requirements. And so that's the way it was worded. I can't support it, but.
I see what you mean. If you did Yeah, I think the key word,
It's like the people that
Would
go
be-
less than 5 acres, so they don't have to go through Act 250.
yeah, usually what you would do is you might add the word existing and set a
Yeah.
time limit and say, you know, if you have a lot that's been in existence either
Since-
for a certain
Yes.
amount of time or since a certain year.
Yeah, contiguous beneficial ownership.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Not in contiguous ownership with other, like, it's not like you
Yeah.
own 5 lots in a row on Lake Iroquois and now you get to,
Right.
you know, chop them all up. So
I still hate it. It fights so much abuse. I hate it.
Okay.
I get your point, but
yeah, all right.
All right. It's 9 o'clock.
Keep going.
Keep going.
How many are there? We're close to the end.
We just run through and don't
Yeah.
talk about them. We'll be okay.
All right.
That's hard for us.
So,
I don't know if we can not talk about it. I'm not sure I understand the first
I
question.
don't understand the question. I'm sorry, you guys.
I said the same thing.
It's the thing that Matt just said. If somebody wants to build it, or well, except that could be modified something to be a duplex, but
just allowing more support for missing middle housing and housing that isn't single family detached housing. Just more, I see it as just off as a being more explicit that these types of housing are allowed.
But there's nothing preventing them today, right? Like, there's nothing that says they're not allowed. Somebody,
Well,
Only in ag rural,
Yeah.
we specifically say 1 and 2 family dwellings are allowed unless you're converting a historic barn, which basically never happens. So
mhm.
it would be a policy shift in that zoning district to specifically identify, you know, things that are more than a duplex are allowed. And, you know, there's a little bit of a parallel to this in the current bill that's in the Vermont Senate on its way to the House now, where I think the current draft says you have to allow a 4-plex anywhere that you allow a single family home.
Mhm.
And without imposing any special dimensional standards on it. And that's sort of like my big house, and do we care if it's 1 house or 4 inside?
yeah,
Just playing out at the state level.
Mhm.
watch that where I grew up, actually, in New Jersey, where every old Victorian house got turned into an apartment building with 5 apartments, because that was the limit. You were allowed to put up to 5 apartments with no permit approval or exempt from everything.
let's keep going.
Hundreds of
I
Alright.
gotta go.
I'm gonna keep going. I think we're getting very close to the end now. Maybe one more question. Have we all voted?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
We should just state that we allow accessibility ramps and
Yeah.
setbacks, because
We
zoning
should anyway.
administrators are supposed to do that whenever somebody asks anyway.
right.
We would just be stating that we support compliance with ADA.
Yeah.
That's the easy one, so.
But it's actually is something that would be good to get codified.
Mhm. Yep,
So it was kind of an absolute. But, you know.
actually, we're not almost done, so anytime,
Let's
should we just stop?
stop with ADUs.
All right, we'll
for
stop with ADUs and then.
Okay,
Oh, right, yeah.
now. We like ADUs, looks like.
Okay,
What is the current limit on this middle question?
oh, the proportionality, it's 50%.
Ag
right?
rural 50%, everywhere else 30%.
No, it's 50% everywhere.
Oh, did we do that?
All
Yeah,
right, hang on,
And
50%,
no more than
50% of
900?
primary
or
dwellings. so
900.
no
they-
more than
Yeah, no
50%.
more than 50%. And,
we can't.
Does it stop
require
somebody
to
from
be
having like
less
a
than
little
900,
farmhouse
but they
and turning a
could go
giant
less
barn
if they
into
Yeah,
10
wanted to.
ADUs? or
and
something?
then the
Yeah.
maximum square
As a
footage is
farmer,
what,
like-
1,500?
If I have a
Yes,
little
15.
farmhouse and a giant barn, can I put 10 tiny ADUs in it?
You get
No.
one ADU. You get one. It has to be accessory to something, and once something has an accessory, it can't have another accessory.
Right.
Got it.
One
Um,
piece of flair.
Can't be an accessory
Okay, I'm
after
gonna
that.
stop my share.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Thank you.
This is great.
yeah,
Thank you, everybody.
all right.
Are we gonna move to adjourn?
So moved.
Oh, great. Have a great next week.
Bye.
Was that?
No, I mean,